Welcome to the Imperium, guys! Today we're going to take a look at an article that came out on June 29th, so I'm a bit late with this, but the point still stands, because for what we are about to see in the future of Warhammer 40K, and of course Henry Cavill's involvement, we do have to talk about what's possible, what's not. Of course this is speculation, but this article is also speculation that I don't really think that it has any merit, because it does sound like the guy that wrote this article just wants to scratch his tongue. And this is by Sam Smith. So, opinion, and yeah, this is his opinion. Henry Cavill should play this Warhammer character, who is far more important than any Space Marine. I think that he should really add 40k there, because we're not talking about the fantasy here. But okay, so he continues. When most people think of Warhammer 40,000, they think of the hulking Space Marines, particularly the bright blue Ultramarines. This is understandable, as they're often front and center of Games Workshop's marketing and stellar series extension, like 2024's Space Marine 2 game, have only deepened this association. So when it was revealed that actor and 40k superfan Henry Cavill would be starring in a Prime Video series based on the Warhammer 40,000 universe, many fans assumed he'll be playing a Space Marine or at least something connected to them. Well, I do think that most people would think that, because they don't actually know Henry Cavill, but we are going to get to that. And he continues, some speculated that Cavill could play a character like Titus, who is the protagonist from the Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine game series, while others thought he may even be playing the Emperor of Mankind, or his treacherous son Horus. Really, I never heard that Henry Cavill could play Horus. I never heard anybody suggesting that, or at least I don't remember. There has been many news, but I really don't remember that part. Well, the Emperor of Mankind will be amazing, but again, why? It's a long topic, we're going to get to that as well. And he continues. This was entirely reasonable, especially after Games Workshop Epic 60 novel Horus Heresy series ended only relatively recently, re-establishing the franchise background lore and spawning the 30k Horus Heresy tabletop game, which is set during that conflict. Others believed Cavill could be playing Robute Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, the first of the Emperor's loyal sons to return, and arguably the closest thing 40k has to a protagonist. Guilliman too would be an excellent choice. Yes, so far I do agree with the guy and his points. It's all well and good. It's important though to mention that some people are still in this delusion that when we are saying 40k, we only mean 40k, which are the current events basically of the universe, the current novels, all of that. Of course that this is what we mean. It's the current time, okay, but 40k really accomplishes everything that came before. And the lore just has this continuity where before the 40k there was the 30k, and that's not any different universe. Some people do act like the 30k is something different, where it's just the past of 40k. But we like to put everything under the same umbrella when we say 40k. But that does not mean that 30k is not basically a part of 40k. At least that is what I'm getting from some of my comments, which to me is baffling. Because the whole lore, it is Warhammer, the sci-fi universe. Warhammer 40k is just to say also, well, we are talking about the sci-fi, we're not talking about the fantasy universe. So I think that's important to clarify, because Warhammer 40k, it is Warhammer 30k, but in the future. So what happened there before? I think it is what Henry Cavill wants to bring to life, because we don't have anything if we are not telling the story of how the Emperor came to be the Emperor, how he created the Space Marines, the Primarchs, the conquering of the universe, the conquering of Terra, all of that, how we came to this heresy in the first place, and how did we ended up here in the mess that is Warhammer 40k, the aftermath of everything that happened before. That is what it needs to be addressed for us as fans to have some kind of a cohesive storytelling for the general audience to understand 40k. I have been talking about this for the past 2 or 3 years. How would we have the Warhammer universe 40k brought to life? Should we have this continuity? And to me, yes. And for Henry Cavill, I think he thinks the same. Now, what is going to be the actual truth, we shall see, but from everything that I have heard, saw from Henry Cavill thus far, it seems that he is exactly like myself in this particular sense, that he is thinking about the continuity. He is thinking about how to bring this universe to life so everybody can understand it. So we do have a point A for a start and a point B or C that we want to get to eventually, because like I said, if we start to bring absolute chaos to the general audience, that's not gonna work. And we already see that when we watch Warhammer Plus. GW themselves are using this method of complete chaos by bringing us different stories from 40k, sometimes even fantasy. They're just putting it all out there and they're focusing on side stories, which I do not like, because although there are very compelling characters in the side stories and there are very compelling stories that could be told through the views of the people, the regular soldiers, the humans, whatever. Nobody actually really got into 40k because of the humans, because of the regular side stories. Everybody got into 40k because of the gloriousness, the scale, the amazing story about this very interesting, in the shadows, super powerful leader called the Emperor of Mankind, and his ambitiousness to conquer the whole galaxy, first conquering Earth, which was amazing undertaking. I recently did a video about his conquering of Terra and how difficult that was, how many lords he had to deal with, how many challenges, because they were not born yesterday. They had their resources, their armies, their own ways of dealing with the enemy. The Emperor had to conquer them all and explain to humanity how the new way is now. So he is a figure of absolute excellence when it comes to scale. Yeah, he's not perfect as a character. That's another thing that we can always go into, and I have done many videos about this. And Henry playing the Emperor to me is going to be amazing. But again, we have this issue where the Emperor is not a fully fleshed out character. He's always been in the shadows. And to fully fleshed out a super powerful character like the Emperor is going to be an amazing challenge on itself, because it's very hard to write a character like that. It is an extreme challenge for any writer to write a compelling character that is that powerful and make him interesting and multi-layered. I think that the Emperor is exactly multi-layered and interesting, but also I do think that that's not developed, that is hinted, that is shown in different ways, but is not fully fleshed out. And maybe that would never be the case. Personally, in a perfect world, if I can wish for Henry Cavill to play someone, I would wish that to be the Emperor, just because of his amazingness and such depth and what he can bring in terms of potential. But again, he's not developed, so we're not gonna get the Emperor. Otherwise, Henry Cavill will have 2 lines probably throughout the whole thing, whether that be movie or TV series. Now, going past this, let's continue with the article here. He's going to make a case for Eisenhorn, which is where I stop agreeing with him. Gilliman is actually a very good choice because he is the most fully fleshed out Primarch. He's the guy that kind of leads the whole story right now. The Lion is somewhere out there, but they have not yet met. We'll see what's gonna happen in the future. Books, of course, we also have Pandemonium, the non-Abnett book that is tied to this new universe that we're going to see. All the information that we have so far points to the fact, or is hinting at the idea, that this new book is kind of connected or very tightly connected to what we can have in the future with the Amazon shows or movies, and that Abnett is trying to not spoil anything, and he is under NDA. He's not allowed to talk about this. And this book is delayed because they're trying to connect things, something in the present day or something in the past, we don't know. But it's so interesting because we're just getting started, and I'm just extremely excited for other people to actually finally know what is Warhammer 40K. That is why we have Henry Cavill to make sure that this universe is brought perfectly to life, and that is why I do think that he's not gonna go small. He's going to go big. It's going to be so epic that everybody are gonna know what is Warhammer 40k, and everybody are going to see what is the difference between 40k and Star Wars and Dune and Foundation and whatever else universe you wanna throw in here, because 40k is the most unique, the universe with the most depth, the universe that's most brutal, but also most action-packed, and I do think, at least in my personal opinion, that has more meaning than most universes. Although it looks grim and dark, I do think that there's many things there that are very in between the lines that you can understand. If you also have read other types of literature before, it's not exactly what it seems. But anyway, I digress. Let's continue with the article and let's see what he says. Really, it's such a broad topic. However, as tiny snippets of information hackle out about the upcoming streaming series, the evidence is starting to support another theory that Cavill won't be playing a super soldier like Space Marine, a Primarch or the Emperor, but a human. And not only just a human, but one who's become a firm fan favorite and a character who is entrenched in some of 40k's most important storylines. We're talking about Gregor Eisenhorn, an Inquisitor, who's the star of multiple books and also his own tabletop model. Eisenhorn's job is to sniff out corruption by chaos, essentially Warhammer's version of hell, and the otherworldly force that corrupted Horus, then deal with it accordingly and often ruthlessly. Okay, I'm just going to stop him right here, because what we had with Eisenhorn, guys, that was like, what, 5 years ago? There was a project long before the talks of Henry Cavill or whatever, and this was scrapped. I do not think that Henry would want to come back to him, because he explicitly said that if he agrees to play Eisenhorn, he will automatically be given up on the Emperor, the Primarchs, whoever else is a major character, even Constantine Valdor. Those are the major characters in 40k, those are the guys that are pushing everything forward. Gregor Eisenhorn is great Inquisitor, don't get me wrong, but he is just a little tiny drop in the whole story, and he's not most important. He's just not. He can do major things, he can do amazing things, he can be a badass, but there's so many other characters that are badasses. Even freaking Titus from Space Marine 2 is so special, and he obviously has some kind of a resistance to the warp, and it's just amazing to see and how this is portrayed in the game. That's so cool. He's a Space Marine, he's an Ultramarine, he is someone that recently crossed the Rubicon and became Primaris. I mean, there's many things to him. Of course, he's not the only one. There's Dante. You can make much more compelling story with him or Dante even. Dante's like the oldest Space Marine. He's one of the oldest Space Marines. But he's still there and he still has some kind of a mission to fulfill. His duty is just not yet ended, and Sanguinius brought him back for a reason, and even when you think that Sanguinius is somewhere out there in the warp trying to even help his sons, indirectly or directly. Oh my gosh, it is so amazing. There's so many other things, like Eisenhorn is the last thing on my mind personally, and Henry also mentioned that anyway, by his own words, he will miss out on playing major characters. So I think that they fall off the wagon right away, because we know what Henry said.
There are a lot of characters from the Warhammerverse, the universe that I want to be, but I can only really be one, because once I'm one, then I can't be others. If it were to ever happen, if there were to be anything live action, I would have to be very aware of that. It is obviously character rich, especially the 40k universe. I suppose I could play a different character from the Warhammer Fantasy universe versus the 40k universe, but again, I'm now just dreaming. So I'd have to speak to the guys at Games Workshop and see what happens.
5 years, you'd make a very good Gregor Ryzen, I think.
That would be exciting, yes, but then I burn Primarchs. and the Captain General. So I don't really know.
And he said it very firmly, so I do think that this article is crap from that point of view, but let's continue. While Eisenhorn started out as an inquisitor who did things by the book, his increasingly complicated story has seen him take a more radical approach to protecting humanity, and one that often puts him at risk of corruption by chaos. As a result, he's seen as a rogue when compared to his fellow inquisitors. But while Eisenhorn hasn't quite entered anti-hero territory yet, he'd still be an ideal choice as the complicated and morally grey protagonist of Warhammer TV series. And it's looking increasingly likely that this will be the role Henry Cavill plays when the show starts edging into view. Oh, come on, my guy. Like I've said, Henry Cavill already talked about this. So Eisenhorn, no matter how compelling he seems to be, there's many other characters like him. Literally. Warhammer is so rich, like Eisenhorn is not end-all be-all. So we gotta drop this. He will be great for the series, don't get me wrong, but not before establishing the main universe, how 40k even works, what is 40k, and then going to Inquisitors that actually never even were a tank before the Emperor sat on the Golden Throne, unfortunately. So we gotta know what came before, because what came before is much more interesting than what we freaking have now. What we have now is not what the Emperor wants, what we have now is just an aftermath. And Eisenhorn is a product of that aftermath. No matter if he's very interesting right now or he's not, he deserves to be shown and seen, but not before we have an established universe, that's the point. Freaking general audience will never click with Warhammer if they don't know what's the previous story of Warhammer. Because the previous story is the foundation, once again, is the foundation, is what 40k is. Although this was the past though is everything. Of course, he continues, this is far from confirmed, but the stars are starting to align that way. For starters, a show that follows Space Marines primarily would be very expensive for a studio to make. Oh yes, of course. But my guy, that studio has money. That's the thing. They have money and they can ruin, make and break this. But Henry Cavill is there, so I don't believe that they will ruin this. It wouldn't be possible, but focusing the action on 8-foot-tall super soldiers battling Tyranids and Orcs may be a bit ambitious for 40k's first live-action outing. Oh my goodness, it is ambitious, but 40k is ambitious. So if you're gonna show something that's ambitious to begin with, you gotta go all out. You gotta do it, otherwise you are failing already to accurately portray this enormous, amazing universe. That is a fact. However, a more human history focused on intrigue and the subtle but insidious nature of chaos could be incredibly compelling, and Eisenhorn is the most obvious candidate for such a story. It would also show the audience that there is so much more to 40k than Space Marines. As epic as they are, they exist to protect humanity, so let's see some actual humans once in a while. So that is intellectually dishonest to me, absolutely, because Warhammer 40k is established on the backs of the Space Marines, the Primarchs, the Emperor, the Custodes, whatever, and then we have the humans, yes. The human armies are like the largest in the Imperium, and without them we cannot win any wars. The Space Marines are not enough, okay. That is a fact, but also what makes Warhammer 40k are not regular foot soldiers, because we do have them in every universe that ever was. And yes, the human soldiers, the Astra Militarum, the Sisters of Silence, the Sisters of Battle, they're not like anyone else really, because even the regular foot soldier, the Astra Militarum, are amazing. They have heart, they're so determined. So loyal for the most part, of course. They have very different armies. They're not all the same. Different types. They're great, but that's just it. The spice, the flavor of Warhammer 40k. They're the additional meal. They're not the main course. That's what this guy has to get. We don't need to relate to regular humans. We don't need that. If you have any kind of a self-esteem in yourself as a human being, you want to see something greater than yourself. You want to see qualities that are applied to bigger characters. You want to see the grandiose, so to speak, the big, the bold, You want to see a small human story sometimes, occasionally, to be applied as a supplement to the bigger story, to the bigger characters. You want to see that humans also have heart and willpower to endure, to survive. Okay, but that is always there. That is not something that we don't see. And actually, recently, because of Games Workshop wanting to go all out on the smaller stories, we saw quite a lot of that. But guys, we are going to see that anyway because it's always there. But if we don't have the main storylines, the battle, you don't have the epos, if you don't have the Achilles and the Hectors, we don't have anything. We don't really have anything. Because we don't have the base that those soldiers to stand on. Why are those soldiers there? Because they're fighting for whom? The Emperor. They're fighting for whom? The Primarchs. We gotta see those guys. So stop it with that nonsense of being relatable, because that's the same issue that we're going to have now with the new Superman movie. Because James Gunn wants to make him to be a pussy, a whiny, annoying guy who complains, have complexes, insecurities, and all of that. Who the heck cares? Who the heck wants to look up to a guy that's so down within himself? He could not get over himself. That's kind of like a different topic. In the same time, it is the same thing with today's mentality that we have to relate. And the only way to relate is to see weak characters on the screen, or to see weaker characters, in some way, shape, or form. But for goodness me, where are the heroes? Or, okay, Warhammer 40K, there is no heroes in such a way, but there are stronger characters. They also go through hardship, but they have powers. They're big. They're badass. They have armor. They have to be amazing, more amazing than anything, because they're facing more amazing than anything odds that we can't even imagine in general. That is great. That's entertainment. Focus on that. We don't need relatability. We need inspiration. We need to shout out to the world like badass Primarch fighting. Yeah. That is it, guys. That is where the awesomeness lies. And then we respect the humans because they stay side by side to those characters, and they also give their all, although they're so vastly inferior physically and mentally as well, by the way, to all of those amazing characters. That is it. So for me, this is a very sorry article. And this guy just continues on, and then he proceeds to even say the word evidence again, which is not there. There's no evidence for this. But he says, more evidence for this casting comes from Eisenhorn's creator, the author Dan Abnett, when asked about Pandemonium, the next novel in his Backwing series, which is a spin-off from the Eisenhorn books. Abnett revealed he is under a non-disclosure agreement with Games Workshop and cannot talk about it. Well, how is this evidence? Okay, Eisenhorn maybe is there. It doesn't mean that he is going to appear in the future shows. Maybe he would, but again, this doesn't mean that Henry's gonna play him. This doesn't mean that Eisenhorn is going to be a main character, because he never was. He is still someone that is connected to everything else and has to push on his own, at his own spot of the universe. He has to deal with his own demons. Yeah, he can be connected to whoever. Like right now, we don't know that. So what evidence? It's speculation. Jesus, you can be very misled from how these articles are written. Then he proceeds, and we are going to the end of this article. The delay of the Pandemonium book has baffled many Warhammer fans, but if elements of its story are being adapted for TV, then this could explain why. It also lends more credibility to the theory that Eisenhorn will be involved in the series and most likely played by Henry Cavill. No, it doesn't. This is not how you make conclusions. No. This brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. The adventures of Benquin and Eisenhorn have seen both characters on the trial of the mysterious king in yellow, whose identity was revealed in the last book of the series. The character was once known as Constantine Valdor, who was the Emperor's bodyguard during the Horus Heresy and like a brother to his actual sons, the Primarchs. For reasons unknown, then now 10,000 years old Valdor is researching for the means to take control of the Emperor and therefore humanity. I don't think that he is doing that. By the ways that he is talking about this, it seems like Valdor is going to portray the Emperor. But he is one of the most loyal custodies there ever were. He is like the first freaking badass custody. He's amazing, so I don't think that he's gonna portray the Emperor. I think that he's gathering an army. He's working behind the scenes to bring back the Emperor, or he's working to give some kind of a voice to the Emperor, like directly to be his hand in the material world, so to speak. Gilliman is kind of like that, but I think that Valdor could be even more of a direct force, directly taking orders from the Emperor. That's how I see it right now, from everything that I also know about Constantine Valdor and what he's doing right now. And we have just a bit more from this article. Valdor's intentions and what could happen if he succeeds could have galaxy-shattering implications, and Eisenhorn might be the only person who can prevent this from coming to pass. I really don't think that those guys are against one another. I really don't think so, guys. And to finishing this article, this essentially makes Eisenhorn one of the most important players in all of Warhammer. Oh boy, God, Jesus. This is very, very, like, you know, out there. It's just huge speculation. It is very far-fetched to me. Okay, finishing the last sentence. And if Cavill has indeed been cast in this role, it means both fans and newcomers are in for one heck of a ride, and without a Space Marine in sight. Jesus Christ. This is very stupid. This comes from a very weak mindset of how you can portray a story of this magnitude, and this just should not happen. I just think that this is very blind and baseless, absolutely baseless speculation, and I do not subscribe to it, not even a little bit. But guys, as you know, we're going to see what is going to happen in the future, because it is coming. It's going to take a while. So Henry also said, guys, recently in the article, it is a tricky IP and a very complex IP. And that's what I love about it. The challenges that come with putting this on the page in a way that is doing justice to that complexity, that trickiness, and that nuance is a challenge I'm enjoying enormously. So here you go, guys. This is just, to me, more reliable and further confirms that he wants to bring us everything that is Warhammer in the best way possible. And he does realize that it's complex, and he does realize that it's a challenge, but he wants that challenge because he knows that if he does this good and well, if he takes on that challenge and actually takes it on successfully, we're going to have the best thing that was put on screen in recent years, or even in general. So I'm hopeful. In Henry Cavill, I do trust, because he has proven himself and his integrity when it comes to the things that he loves. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like to support me, the links are down below. In the midst of the warp where everything else is chaos, I do have my own pocket dimension of OnlyFans where I do bring you, instead of chaos, disgusting corn and slashy things, I do bring you education about how to do your fitness, how to be healthier, how to eat, so nutrition. And if you have any problems with your intimate relationships, some sex education is also there to help you out, but it is just me, the Empress, talking about those issues and really helping you guys. You can DM me there. We can talk about whatever issues you may have. It's also kind of like life coaching. So I do that there. It is my own dimension, just like Constantine Valdor has one little dimension, pocket universe in between the warp. And I am trying to make a difference. How he is trying to make a difference there, actually. Or you can say that the Emperor of Mankind is in his own pocket dimension in the warp, and his soul still lives there, still has a place. And from there he helps his Primarchs and his sons in general, whoever needs him in the Imperium, and that is exactly what I'm trying to do with my OnlyFans. So, with that being said, guys, thank you so much. Check out my gaming channel, Warhammer Empress, and check out my superhero channel, which I have with my friend Logan, Superhero Truth. We're going to cover Superman, and we're going to tell you objectively how this movie is, and how Superman was portrayed. Good or bad, right or wrong, we are there for you. Thank you guys, love ya. With me, the 40K Empress, for the Imperium.
For the Imperium must not fail. Imperium we prevail. The warriors march with sacred might. Their purpose burning crystal bright. To lift the throne world from its plight and guard humanity's light.